Good morning. So when I served on the Berwick Planning Board and a few other boards in town, I used to do a recap after our meetings. Usually the next morning, I would do a recap, just kind of like the Cliff's Notes version, because not everybody watches the meetings or attends the meetings, but I feel like a lot of people want to know what's going on. So I stopped doing that when I stopped my service to our town, and I just thought that me serving on the boards doesn't preclude me from sharing the information. So I'm going to do a recap. There was a meeting last night, the Select Board, the Berwick Planning Board, and Envision Berwick. They try to meet twice a year just to go over things that kind of involve all three of those boards. And so they met last night. I was actually asked to go there for from an audience member, but it was fun to go, and I took notes, so why not share them with you guys? So the first thing that came up was the marijuana cap, and that's the cap on marijuana licenses in town. Right now there are 19 licenses out. Not all of them are active, and that's the cap. The cap was set a few years ago. I remember because I was on the planning board at the time, and we set it because it was every meeting we were going over marijuana, and it was just people were really trying to get in, and we wanted to make sure we set the performance standards in the land use ordinance to protect the town beforehand. So they're considering, because the cap is actually a temporary thing, they're just talking about whether to remove the cap, whether to add more licenses. The code enforcement officer says she is getting calls about it. The town planning assistant also said that he's gotten calls about it. So how they left it was, it seems like the chairman of the planning board wants to just remove the cap. The chairman of the select board really was all for removing the cap. Also, eventually, kind of sounded like he wanted to maybe wait a little while. The code enforcement officer wanted to potentially raise the cap, like raise it by 5. The vice chairman of the planning board did say that, why don't we put it on the ballot and let the people of the town vote on it? I particularly like that idea, considering that's the form of government that we have. But that's how that was left. The select board is going to tackle that, and there will be a public hearing on that, so stay tuned. The next thing on the agenda was moratorium and process. And what brought this up is there is a proposed gas station that is going in on the corner of Route 4 and Blackberry Hill Road. Now, the application is not in yet with the planning department, but there has been a traffic movement permit with the DOT that has come through, that has been received. So why a moratorium was discussed, and I don't think they're going to put a moratorium on gas stations, but is because in our land use ordinance, we don't even have a definition for gas station. So not only do we not have a definition for it, but we don't have performance standards, specific performance standards for a gas station. And a performance standard is basically saying, this use is allowed, it's a conditional use, but you have to follow these rules. So sometimes the rules are about traffic, sometimes the rules are about aesthetics and parking lot, like screening parking lots. Sometimes it's about lighting. So there's a lot of things that we can put in the performance standards. And with something like a gas station, especially because nowadays gas stations are not just gas stations, right? They sell alcohol, that was brought up. They have car washes. They've got drive-through food operations. So there's a lot more going on with a gas station, and the planning board is now kind of trying to spin its wheels and catch up, saying, oh no, we don't even have performance standards for this, so how are we going to address this? It was brought up, the Route 4, the traffic issues out there, speed. We've had so many deaths on that road. Basically what was determined is that they're going to deal with that application as it comes. They can't just put a moratorium on it now because the application's already been submitted with the DOT, so they don't want to get into any legal trouble. So as the application comes in, they're going to explore what specific performance standards they would have to put into the land use ordinance, and they're going to make those conditional use conditions of the application, so conditions of approval. A condition of approval is if you come into the planning board and you need to get a conditional use permit, they say, great, we're going to give this permit to you, but you have to do A, B, C, and D. Sometimes it's your hours of operation. Sometimes it's the level of noise you make. So that's how they're going to deal with that rather than go the moratorium route. Then they had an edge update. So the edge, the L-shaped building, is almost full. From what I understand, it's all woman-owned businesses too, which I think is pretty cool. The new building that they're building with the apartments is going well. The code enforcement officer just did her rough framing inspection there and really said they're doing a great job on that. The next building that's going to go in is a coffee drive-through. I heard it's Aroma Joe's. If you watch the meeting, somebody says Aroma Joe's and then they say, shh, don't say that. So apparently Aroma Joe's is going to be moving down there. And then both the new roads that they're putting in, they're going to be starting those toward the end of the year. They are working on getting the utilities underground over there. And then one big thing that we're all going to be dealing with this summer is, so remember when they were doing the underground drainage on School Street and Old Sanford Road and how they had the temporary light up and it was just kind of traffic nightmare? Well, that's coming to a downtown near you. From the edge to Sawmill Hill, basically Gateway Gas's back parking lot. They're doing a big underground drainage project there, just like that. So, and it'll be this summer, so expect delays. The next thing that they talked about was basically how to preserve land and maintain rural and agricultural atmosphere. So it's always been important to the townspeople in Berwick to preserve our farms. And so they were just exploring different ways that we can preserve farms and not have them turned into developments. And that's really important to people in town. Jeremy Caston, who is the chairman of the Envision Berwick committee, brought up that, you know, on all of the different surveys that we've done that dictate what the comp plan says, the comp plan dictates the land use ordinances, but all those surveys that were done, that's one of the most important things. And we're not, as a town, proactively doing anything to preserve this farmland. We were talking about different ways that you can preserve farmland, and one of them is that, you know, if somebody is a good steward of the land and has a philanthropic heart and owns property, they can preserve it with a land trust. Now, you don't get a lot of money for doing this, and a lot of people that have large parcels of land are, wanting to leave a legacy to their family and selling them off. And the most money that they're going to get for these large parcels is from a developer who's going to develop it. So it was also brought up, chairman of the select board brought up, well, maybe we need to look at updating some land use ordinances where we require more open space to be preserved if there is a developer that comes in on that. But really, I think the real the energy of the room was to try to bring farmers into town to just farm that land rather than even splitting it up. But so that wraps up that meeting. I watch the meetings, so you don't have to. I'm going to start updating everybody. We have a select meeting tonight, but I don't know what the way this snow is coming down. If you guys have any questions about what's going on in town, about real estate, shoot me a message here. If you're watching this on YouTube, all my information is below. Have a great day. I'm off to do my taxes.